Hi, my name is Lindsay. I'm the tutoring specialist here at Literacy Pittsburgh, and today we're going to be talking about high school equivalency, or the GED and HiSET tests. Some of the things that we're going to talk about today is what is high school equivalency. Then we'll talk about the similarities and differences between the GED and HiSET. Next, we'll really dig into the GED, as that's what most of our students here at Literacy Pittsburgh take, including the test sections, GED ready tests or practice tests versus GED, the actual test. We'll talk about Literacy Pittsburgh's voucher protocols, and then we'll talk about the pros and cons of testing online versus testing in person. And then finally, we'll talk about some ways that you can best support your student in passing the GED. What is high school equivalency? High school equivalency is a credential available to Pennsylvania residents who do not possess a high school diploma. And I say Pennsylvania resident because in order to test with Literacy Pittsburgh, your student has to have a Pennsylvania state-issued ID card. That's not to say that if your student has passed a GED section in another state, that past test will still be available in their account, so they will not have to retake that section. So who takes the test? Anyone who's taking the GED must be at least 18 years of age and not possess a high school diploma. That can include US-born students who did not complete high school, or we have seen it where it's non-US-born students who may have a degree or a high school diploma from their home country that has not been evaluated or accredited by the United States. If this is your student's situation, please let your coordinator know, as we might be able to help them with this process. If you're interested in learning more about the high school equivalency and the GED HiSET tests that goes beyond the scope of this video, please let us know, as there is a training module available from the Pennsylvania Department of Education that is available to tutors to take that takes about 45 minutes to complete. Now, let's talk a little bit about the similarities and differences between the GED and HiSET tests. For the GED, it is a 4-section test that students need to pass. We'll talk more in depth about the 4 sections in a bit, but the HiSET is 5 sections. Essentially, the GED has 1 reading test, and the HiSET has broken it into 2 sections. For the GED, a calculator is allowed for part of the math test, while on the HiSET, it is allowed for the whole thing. The GED is a computer-based test only, while the HiSET has computer and paper-based option. If your student does want to take the paper-based test of the HiSET, they do have to request that in advance, so just let them know that. Literacy Pittsburgh also has a lot more resources available for students taking the GED, as all of our textbooks and supplemental distance learning are aligned to the GED. As mentioned, Literacy Pittsburgh also has vouchers to take the GED, while we do not have vouchers to take the HiSET. The similarity between the two is that both tests have a remote and in-person option, and there are in-person testing sites available here in Pittsburgh. Another thing is that the sections for each test can be used together, meaning if, say, I took the reading and the writing tests for HiSET, I could then take the math, science, and social studies for the GED, and they could combine to become 1 credential. The only test that cannot be combined is the reading and the language arts test for HiSET. Since most of our students here at Literacy Pittsburgh take the GED test, we're going to talk a little bit more about that now. As mentioned, the GED is a 4-section test. The first is reasoning through language arts, which is a 3-section test. The first part focuses on reading comprehension, and that takes about 35 minutes. And then your student will have an extended response writing task that lasts about 45. After this, the students will take a 10-minute break and then take the 3rd section test that lasts around 60 minutes. Next is math, and math is a 2-part test that totals in length of about 115 minutes, and the calculator is available on part 2 of this test. Finally, we have science and social studies, with science being a 90-minute test and social studies being a 70-minute test. The GED Ready is the official practice test of the GED, and they are available for all 4 sections, just like the official test. but they are half the length of the official test. The score to pass both the GED Ready and the official GED is a score of 145. At Literacy Pittsburgh, we have found that students who have the most success in passing the actual GED is when they have worked with a tutor in a class or in online learning for at least 12 hours, and then also have a passing score of a 150 on the GED Ready. We say 150 because students seem to drop their score in between practice test and the actual test, and we think that is likely due because of the longer length. Literacy Pittsburgh can also provide vouchers for the practice tests and a voucher code for the actual test. We typically give these to students based on their score on the TABE test, but if you think your student is ready to take a practice test for the GED, please let us know. Once your student does take a test, we can then provide you with a score report that is connected to your textbook materials. And I'll show you an example of that here in a few slides. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of testing online versus testing in person. For in person, the pro is that the testing center will provide a device to your student that's capable of running the GED testing platform. The con is that students have to travel to that location. So if your student struggles with transportation issues, this could be a barrier for them. Literacy Pittsburgh may be able to provide support with this barrier, so please let your program coordinator know if transportation is going to be an issue for your student. For online testing, the pro is that the student can take it at home. However, there are quite a few cons of taking it online. The first is that your student is then in charge of maintaining test security, meaning that they have to take the test in a quiet room with nothing on their desk. This is then monitored as they take the test by an on-screen proctor. If there's any outside noise or if someone walks through the background of their room, their test could be invalidated. They also have to have a device that has a webcam, sound, and microphone. The test cannot be taken on a tablet or an iPad. If your student wants to take the test online, we can reserve office space at our downtown center for students who want to take it using one of our devices there. This can dramatically reduce the risk that your student's test becomes invalidated. Now that we've talked a little bit about the test, let's move on into how you can support your student in passing these tests. First is that you can help your student to create a GED.com account if they haven't already. This is where your student will go to access GED Ready vouchers and where they'll go to schedule their test when they're ready to take the actual test. Students will need to have selected Literacy Pittsburgh as their test prep center so that we can provide those vouchers. If you or your student needs help doing this, please let us know, as we do have a step-by-step guide that we can send to you. Next is Essential Education. Essential Education is an online learning platform where students can practice content outside of tutoring sessions. The program is self-paced, and students can practice as much or as little as they would like. The program does have limited number of seats, so please let us know if your student is interested. Finally, as I mentioned before, if your student has already taken a GED Ready test or a GED test that they have not passed, we can generate GED score reports for you. And these can be linked to your textbook and will give you specific page numbers in the textbook that your student will need to spend extra time studying. An example of what that looks like here is on the screen. Another thing that is helpful with these score reports is that if your student does have an Essential Education account, we can also specifically assign these skills to them in their account if you request us to do so. Now let's talk a little bit about how you might support your student in each of the subject tests. For math, you'll want to practice math word problems daily, trying to do at least one word problem each tutoring session. For RLA, you'll want to encourage that your student begin reading daily for at least 15 to 20 minutes. You'll also want to spend some time practicing how to respond to an extended response question. For social studies, it will be important to practice reading non-traditional texts, including political cartoons, maps, and other graphics. And for science, you'll want to help your student Practice the scientific process, including observations, creating a hypothesis, testing the hypothesis, drawing conclusions, and refining the hypothesis. There are additional support materials and videos around these. If you're interested, please check out our tutor YouTube page. If you have any more questions about the GED or high school equivalency in general, please reach out to myself or your program coordinator.